What's going on, y'all? It's Cone back here again today with another video, and today I want to talk for a bit about the MVP race. I've made a couple of videos on this throughout the season already, but it's just getting better and better. This so far has been one of the best MVP races that I can personally remember, and I think it has a chance on this home stretch of the season to end up as one of the greatest MVP races of all time. And this is considering the fact that we've seen some really good ones in the past few years. For the past few seasons, mainly, we've seen Nikola Jokic and Joel Embiid, two of the most talented big men of all time, definitely the two best bigs of this generation, dueling it out for MVP all the way down to the home stretch of the season. Last year, it took until like the last month or so for Embiid to really get a stranglehold on the award before ending up winning his first MVP. The couple years before that, Jokic ends up winning both, but both of them at one point or another were a really close battle between he and Joel Embiid before eventually Jokic found a way to pull away at the end. A couple years prior to that, we saw Giannis face off against James Harden in what was an amazing 2019 MVP battle, and 2 years before that, James Harden is once again featured in a battle, this time against Russell Westbrook, who goes out there and averages a triple-double, carrying the really not playoff deserving Oklahoma City Thunder roster to a playoff spot, a top 6 seed, while Harden's putting up some of the best stats we've seen in a long time, and that battle is still debated to this day on the Twitter timeline pretty much daily at this point. We've seen some fantastic races, but as you probably noticed from me talking about them, more often than not, it comes down to being between two guys. At the end of it, it is a two-man race, and typically by this point, we would have seen the field narrowed down to those final two players. But this season, that hasn't been the case. Right now, we have 4 guys that I can legitimately see walking away with the MVP at the end of the season. There are obviously the favorites, of course, that's how the award works, but if any 4 of these guys you told me they won the MVP at the end of the year, I wouldn't be surprised, and maybe it's just me, but that feels incredibly unique for the MVP race here in the NBA. The 4 frontrunners at the moment are Nikola Jokic, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Luka Doncic, and Giannis Antetokounmpo, and a lot of people have also recently been discussing Jayson Tatum, amongst a couple other guys that I'll throw in at the end, but for the most part, it's been those 4 guys and then Jayson Tatum as of late. And each of these guys has a very unique but very convincing reason for why they should be up there in the MVP conversation, and I don't see any of them slowing down. In fact, every one of these guys is building momentum. They're picking up steam for their MVP case, and again, that's not normal. Typically, we see some guys separate, where in this case, it just feels like the candidates are drawing closer and closer to each other. So let's go ahead and talk about all their MVP cases up to this point. Nikola Jokic right now is the frontrunner. He's got the best odds. If you take a look at most MVP ladders, they have Jokic at the top, and it makes a lot of sense. There's a reason why he's won 2 of the past 3 MVPs, and why he may end up winning his 3rd one this season. Putting up 26 points per game, 12.1 rebounds, and 9.1 assists on 65 true shooting percentage, which is absurd. That's the 2nd best true shooting percentage of anybody averaging at least 25 points per game. He's giving you nearly a 26-point triple-double every single night. He's the best passer in the world. He's top 5 in assists per game, one of the league's best rebounders, an offensive engine unlike any we've really ever seen in the history of the league. When it's all said and done, Jokic is going to go down as one of the best offensive players in the history of basketball. The defense hasn't really ever been his thing, although I think he's become a much better defender than people give him credit for at times. But in terms of offense, he's probably the most complete player on that end on the planet, and again, is probably going to go down historically as one of the best to ever do it. Not to mention the fact that he's also on a team fighting for a top seed in the loaded Western Conference. The reigning champions are 37-19, currently tied with the Clippers for the 3 seed. He's got great team success, he's dominant statistically, he's got everything you would want from an MVP candidate. He's also widely considered by most people the best player in the world, so that probably also adds onto his candidacy as well. He's the favorite for good reason, but over the past few years, mainly last year, we have seen some times where Nikola Jokic slows down a little bit at the end of the season. He doesn't really care much about the MVP award. That's not his focus. His focus is winning championships. And so if he continues to slow down a little bit heading into the last stretch of the season, and if the Nuggets continue on this, I want to say a little bit of a slide. It's not really that, because they still are one of the top 4 seeds, but they're losing ground a little bit on the top 2 squads, specifically in the Thunder and the Timberwolves. And if that continues, say the Nuggets end up as the 4 seed and Jokic takes his foot off the gas a little bit, I could very well see his spot as frontrunner coming back down to earth, while a lot of these other guys are rapidly trying to catch up to him. One of those guys who's picking up the pace is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He's currently 2nd in MVP odds, and that's for very good reason. As someone who has watched him every single night as a Thunder fan, he is firmly in the spot where he belongs to be, up here in the top 3 of the MVP race, and I think he's got a really good argument to win it when it's all said and done. 31.1 points per game, 5.5 rebounds, and 6.6 assists, to go with a league-leading 2.1 steals per game on 64.7 true shooting percentage, which is third amongst players averaging at least 25 points per game, and one of the best marks easily out of any guard in the NBA. Most of the guys ahead of him in the league leaders in true shooting percentage are centers that pretty much just get the ball down low and dunk it outside like Nikola Jokic and Giannis. Shai is in rare company as a guard. He's shooting 54.7% as, again, a guard who is the focal point of defensive coverage. He's an elite mid-range shooter, knocking down some of the toughest mid-range buckets out of anybody, one of the best finishers in the world. There's pretty much no way to stop him when he gets downhill. He's also really been leveling up his three-point shooting. Since January 1st, Shai is shooting 45.7% from three, and his percentage on the season has been brought all the way up to 37.6%. So one of the big arguments against Shai as an all-around offensive player has been that he's not the best three-point shooter. He's closing in on 40%. If he continues this improvement and knocks on a few more free throws, there's a realistic chance that Shai ends the season as a 30-point per game, 50, 40, 90 guy. The fact that that's not out of the realm of possibility is completely absurd. He's also been the most consistent player probably in the entire league this season. Out of his 54 games played, 40 of them have been 30-plus point performances. That's ridiculous. That leads the league. Second place is Luka with 36, then Giannis with 32, and with the way he's putting them up basically every single night, it's unlikely that anyone's going to catch him. Every single night, you can expect at the very least 31, 5, and 5 from Shai with at least a couple of steals, and that's ridiculous for a player that, again, gets the amount of defensive pressure that he does, get sent a lot of double teams this way, consistently is getting the opposing team's best defender. He still finds a way to make opposing teams pay every single night. He's also improved a lot as a passer this season, making some reads that he wouldn't typically make in the past, and he's also been impacting the game as a defender. He is one of the better defensive guards in the entire league, super skilled at using his length in passing lanes, blocking shots, anticipating entry passes is one of the big things for him, and it's led him again to lead the NBA in steals per game, a title that I don't see him relinquishing because he's only gotten better and better as the season has gone on. He could legitimately make an all-defensive team while also being one of the best scorers in the world, and this comes as well with the team's success. The Thunder are 38-17, just one game back of the Timberwolves for the 1 seed in the Western Conference, and they're starting to build a bit of separation from the 3 and 4 spot teams in the Clippers and the Nuggets. Nobody thought they would be here at this point in the season. There were some people who thought that maybe they would be close to a top 4 seed. Not a lot of people would have told you they were fighting for the 1 seed after the All-Star break, but they're here as the 4th youngest team in basketball, and a lot of that has been Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He's got an unbelievable argument on pretty much all sides, and if the Thunder land at one of these top spots specifically, if they get the 2 or even the 1 seed, I think there's a good chance that Shai ends up landing his first MVP award. But while Jokic and Shai are up there at the top of the race, there's one guy who is rapidly storming his way into the consciousness of MVP voters and media alike, and specifically if you take a look at NBA Twitter, a lot of people will tell you that he's the favorite for them at this point, and that guy is Luka Doncic. Right now in the season, he's probably having the best year of his career, which is a lot to say for a guy as good as Luka. He's putting up 34.3 points per game, which leads the league in scoring, 8.8 rebounds per game, 9.6 assists, and 1.5 steals. He's pretty close to averaging a triple-double, and is giving you a 62.1 true shooting percentage, which is a little bit lower than Shai and Jokic, but is still ridiculously good for the volume that he has. Don't get it wrong, Luka is hyper-efficient for the amount of shots that he puts up, and a lot of them are some of the most difficult shots that you will ever see. Like, hard to believe that any of the shots he puts up even come close to falling, never mind the fact that they actually do sometimes. He's got the highest three-point percentage of his career this season, has really elevated his game in that regard, miles ahead of anything we've seen from Luka in the past. It's a career high in assists for him, playing the best defense of his career. The fact that he's leading the NBA in scoring too by 3.2 points per game should definitely not go unnoticed. Like I said, probably the best Luka has ever been, and the Mavericks as a team are surging right now. The only thing that's really keeping him back at this point of Shai and Jokic in this race is team success, because those two guys are top 4 seeded, while the Mavericks at this point are currently the 6th seed, but they've won 7 games in a row now, have pushed themselves out of the play-in, and they're only 1 game back of the Pelicans at the 5 spot, and there's a lot of season left to play. If they continue to play like this, especially looking how they have since the trade deadline where they picked up Daniel Gafford and PJ Washington, if they end up landing like one of the top 4 seeds, it's going to be hard not to take Luka Doncic's resume into strong account in this MVP race. I've seen a lot of people say he should still be the front runner even if he lands at like a 6th seed, and we have seen MVPs win it in the past around that spot, like Jokic a couple of years ago and Russell Westbrook back in 2017, but it's really hard to. Really the only way you can pull that off is if you have a completely lackluster supporting cast like those two guys did. Jokic, of course, dealing with a lot of injuries, and Russ dealing with a team that was now without Kevin Durant, and just not good at all. Somebody watched every game of that season. One of the worst supporting casts I've ever seen for a superstar player. Luka's supporting cast is pretty good. I mean, it's not like the best I've ever seen, but I don't think that argument is going to be enough to get him the MVP if he lands at like the 6th seed. But again, the Mavericks are surging. I would be surprised if they don't end up at the very least as a top 6 seed. If you told me at the end of the season with the way they're peaking right now, if they land as a top 3-4 spot team, I definitely wouldn't be surprised. And if they get to that point with Luka having the statistical season that he is, especially with the fact that it's probably going to get even better if they do find their way towards the top of the standings, there's a real chance that Luka finally lands the MVP award, something that has always kind of felt inevitable for him. And then you have Giannis Antetokounmpo, who isn't getting as much MVP love as those other 3 guys, but is definitely still in the race, and in my opinion, deserves a lot more recognition for the ridiculous season he's having so far. On the year, he's putting up 30.8 points per game, 11.2 rebounds, 6.4 assists, 1.4 steals, and 1.1 blocks, with a 65.1 true shooting percentage, which is the highest out of anybody putting up 25 plus points per game, and 13th in the NBA overall. He's also shooting over 60% from the field, and if he maintains that in his point per game average, Giannis is going to go down as the first player ever to put up 30 or more points per game while shooting 60% or better from the field. That's absolutely absurd. He's been Shaq-like this season. He's cut down in his 3-point attempts. It's pretty much just said, nobody can stop me getting to the basket. I'm going to just continuously attack downhill and get there. And it's worked. He is having the most efficient season of his career, one of the most efficient volume scoring seasons by anyone ever. He's been solid as a passer, a phenomenal rebounder, a really good defender. Giannis is dominating in typical Giannis fashion. Really, the main thing that's not working in his favor is that the Bucks have had a lot of problems. They're looked as a juggernaut coming into the season with the addition of Damian Lillard, the big blockbuster of the summer. They had him, Giannis, Brook Lopez, Chris Middleton. This felt like a team that was going to be battling with the Boston Celtics for the 1 seed and a real championship contender. But over the course of the season, they've had a lot of ups and downs, and it's resulted in them still being a top 3 seed, but they're not too far out of the 4 spot. They're sitting a full 9 games back of the Celtics, who they were supposed to be competing with. It hasn't been the season that many people envisioned for the Bucks, and this is not Giannis's fault at all. He's been fantastic. He's been one of the biggest reasons why the Bucks have been able to survive despite the issues that they have, like Dame not really being himself up to this point, the coaching problems that continue to persist. Adrian Griffin got fired midway through the season, and since Doc Rivers came into town, they're, I believe, 3-7 in their first 10 games under him. That's still a problem. The defense is abysmal. The depth has been a big problem. If Giannis wasn't playing out of his mind, I don't know where this Bucks team would be at this point, but because the team hasn't been as great as they were supposed to, I think that's probably going to put a nail in the coffin for Giannis's candidacy. However, they've still got a lot of games left to play. If they go ahead and make a second half run, they return to form, become the Bucks that people thought they were going to be, and say they land a 2 seed, make up some of the ground on the Celtics, I do think Giannis still has a shot, and at this point, I believe he's deserving of more love because what he's been doing so far, despite the weird situation surrounding the Milwaukee Bucks so far, has been nothing short of extraordinary. Probably rounding out the top 5 in terms of candidates, there is Jayson Tatum, who has been the best player so far on easily the best team in the league, and if that's your main criteria for the MVP, he might be your pick. He's also putting up great statistics, 27 points per game, 8.5 rebounds, 4.8 assists with a steal, shooting 47.5% from the field and 36.6% from deep. He's been really good, the leading scorer, a good defender, the best player, and he has him looking like the title favorite. He's recently been getting more and more hype. I think people are realizing how good the Celtics are and how great Jayson Tatum has been, but I don't think he'll end up winning the award, and I don't think he'll be one of those top 4 candidates, mainly because the Celtics are loaded. They have him, they've got Jaylen Brown, Kristaps, Drew Holiday, and Derek White as the starting lineup. All 5 of those guys are all-star caliber players, and it's hard to make an argument for Jayson Tatum being the MVP when he's surrounded by that much talent. It's not his fault, he's still been amazing, but he just doesn't really have the statistics to go ahead and match up with those guys. The team is really good. It's not his fault, he's just on a great roster, and I think the more important thing for the Celtics at this point is competing for championships rather than getting Jayson Tatum an MVP, so I don't think anybody minds. It's just a result of the situation that he's in. However, if say the Celtics go on a crazy run the second half of the season, push for like 68 wins or something like that, I could maybe see Jayson Tatum getting a little bit more love for the award and maybe finishing in that top 4. Outside of that happening though, I think for the most part it's going to end up as a 4-man race, but it's going to be one that's really, really good. Jokic is the best in the world and has the Nuggets looking for a repeat 1 seed, perhaps even a repeat title run, while putting up some of the best statistics in the entire association. Shai has become a superstar and has the young Oklahoma City Thunder looking like championship contenders, playing some of the most consistent and dominant two-way basketball in the entire sport. Luka Doncic is maybe the most impressive statistically and has the Mavericks rapidly looking better and better as they rocket up the standings with a real chance to challenge for one of those top 4 seeds before the end of the season. Giannis is having a historic year and has a chance in this final stretch to make the Bucks back into the juggernaut that they seem to be coming into the season, and if they can make up some ground, he's going to have a really good case. I don't see any of these guys slowing down pretty drastically. And the fact that it's still an open, seemingly four-man race at this point in the season when we're after the All-Star break is absurd. And things would be even crazier if Joel Embiid didn't end up getting hurt. At the point that he did get injured, he was looking like by far the favorite for the award. So maybe he would have just ended up running away with it. But imagine if we had all these guys playing at this level with Embiid and the stuff that he was doing also in the race. It would be insane. Unfortunately, Embiid does get hurt, and now it's down to probably these four guys: Shai, Luka, Jokic, and Giannis. One of the four of them is going to walk away with the MVP, and I cannot wait to see how it goes down the stretch. A few other players that I think are deserving of love probably won't get serious consideration, but they've been great. I like Kawhi Leonard, who's putting up 24 points per game, 6 boards, 3.7 assists, shooting 64% true shooting percentage. He's been hyper efficient, great defensively. The Clippers are really good, one of the top 4 seeds in the West. The problem is the numbers are just way worse than the other top players. He's also got PG and Harden on the team, which takes away a little bit from him in terms of the statistics and I guess just the overall value level that a lot of these other guys have to their teams. He's not going to win the award, but could maybe end up finishing top 5 depending on where the Clippers land, and he definitely deserves some recognition for being one of the best players in the world so far this season. There's also guys like Donovan Mitchell, who's currently in the midst of the best season of his career up to this point, and as the Cavaliers as the 2 seed despite dealing with a number of injuries, and Jalen Brunson, who has been fantastic again in the face of a lot of injuries for the New York Knicks. He's been their leading scorer, he's been their best player on a consistent basis. He's become way better than I thought he was going to when the Knicks signed him to a contract a couple of off seasons ago, and has become a bona fide all-NBA caliber guy on a Knicks team that, if they can get healthy, could definitely push for a top 2 seed in the East. But yeah, I think that's all I've got to say about the MVP race up to this point. It's been fantastic. I cannot wait to see how it wraps up. There are so many guys who are directly in that competition, putting up some of the best statistics we've ever seen. It's going to be a lot of fun. Let me know down below in the comments who you currently have as the MVP and who do you think will end up winning it? What factors are you taking into account? And is there anybody else that I didn't mention that you think deserves some love for MVP even though they might not end up winning it? And also, if there are any other MVP races that you think rival this one that I maybe didn't think about going into the video, definitely let me know down below in the comments too. I appreciate y'all watching. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. I'll see y'all later. We're one save back.